So JD here, and today I'm with Stephanie, and we are talking about one percenters. So our clinic, Summa Up by Dr. Ryan, is dedicated to kind of world-class and leading entrepreneurs and business owners and executives. And oftentimes we interact with these clients, and what our number one focus is really to reduce the likelihood of stroke, cancer, dementia, and heart disease, things that knock people out of the game prematurely. I recently came across a client who told me about a CEO of Deutsche Bank named Anshu Jain. And this individual died prematurely at 59 years young, right? He was just in the prime of his life. He was kind of going on to the next leg. And it kind of got me thinking, hey, why so early in 2022, right? And so this other client kind of shared a story about Jeff Bezos and how these business owners and founders and executives they're not just focused on business success, but they're focused on their health, right? And so what are your thoughts on that kind of shift, the paradigm shift right now?
I think that, with society changing and evolving the way that it is, and especially business and technology, everything is just amplified.
It's super interesting you're mentioning that because I feel like we're in the age of Instagram, infinite distraction. But what's really funny is I'm just going to share my screen quickly on this article that this client kind of shared with us is you see yachts and watches, right? So it's not about being successful, getting the wealth, getting kind of to the next level, but it's also about enjoying it. Fascinating to see Jeff Bezos, just trying to be super fit. Elon Musk of all people being shamed, right? For not being in good health, right?
I think that it's something that's a pattern that's really easy to fall into, especially when you're working. So many hours a week. I see startup owners, startup founders working, 80 plus hours a week. That's not even atypical. When you're working on something that you feel so passionate about, it's really hard to kind of remember that you need to focus a little bit on yourself.
There should be a balance.
Yes, there should be a balance. Because not only because, taking care of yourself is important, and that's just, a fact of life, but also when you take care of yourself, you function so much better. Like the way that you operate is more efficient. Your productivity increases. And when you eat well, when you take care of yourself, when you prioritize yourself, even though you might say it's difficult to put in an hour or two exercising and preparing your meals every day, that kind of a thing, or even just making healthy eating habits, it amplifies your productivity in such a way that it's mathematically insensible not to,
Not to do it. Yeah, it's tough. As far as I know, I think when I was in the growth equity world, I worked those crazy hours because we were trying to find the best companies, we're trying to source them, we're trying to reach out to them, we're trying to help them out on the hiring side and kind of the growth trajectories and so forth. But what was super tough about that was actually making the sacrifice of waking up early and working out and eating healthy, right? It's so easy to effectively just grab something from DoorDash right now, right? Or get something on the go and get back to work, right? And not move, right? Because you don't see the benefits from working out or eating right, instantaneous, right? And I think that's kind of the lesson I'm learning in looking at kind of these articles. It's really, we're trying to fight instant gratification and defer that cycle of reward, right? And getting the gains and the benefits. And it's just fascinating kind of showing the article again about these individuals. And so it's I guess I like to say that 40-year overnight success stories, right? And what's interesting is now it's not necessary for them just to be healthy and have the right career success and the personal success. It's also them, they want to enjoy it, live longer, right? And they're taking the long-term view. And it's really interesting. There's another article, same piece, right? Talking about how it's all about being healthy and fitness and not really being the part, but it's looking the part, feeling the part, right? And so it's really interesting. What was really fascinating, Stephanie, I don't know if you'll find this humorous, but Mark Zuckerberg, does that ring a bell? Facebook founder?
I think I've heard of him.
He's fighting. He's actually doing MMA, right? He's a kind of software developer, founder. Right? He's just CS guy, but it's fascinating seeing him, pick up mixed martial arts, right? And going through that, I couldn't believe it. I was like, is that real? Right. But it's kind of inspiring a little bit, right?
Yeah, no, it's not him in the metaverse. It looks like
exactly right.
Avatars don't look quite like that yet.
Just yet, right?
Yeah, no, but I think that anyone smart who kind of gets a taste of it, and all of these founders they have to be incredibly intelligent and adaptable. And I think that once they get that new input, which is that it's helpful, it improves your performance to exercise, they're going to create a habit that eventually they start to recognize the effects of and how they're feeling. And in the short term, you recognize the difference. I mean, immediately afterward, when you do any kind of exercise or cardio, you lift weights, you might feel sore the next day. But and immediately after that, you're going to feel fantastic. Like, and even if you're beat up, it's like having caffeine in the morning. It's like your morning coffee. Even if you don't have coffee, you're going to feel great after you do some kind of movement straight out of bed in the morning. I mean, that's been my experience. And that just becomes more and more prevalent in how you work after you create a consistent habit and you continue with that. So I think
it
that
starts compounding, right? The benefits. And
yeah.
then you start thinking, hey, if I can get the morning cardio in, why not the morning workout? If I can get the morning workout in, why not get the 8 hours of sleep, right? Or 7 to 8, right? And it starts kind of going, and it's almost like kind of like how you compound capital or compound investments. Like your health is compounding, right? The right choices, going to bed at the same time, waking up at the same time. That was the hardest challenge for me personally. I struggled for this for years. The ability of just pre-Ring, I had the hardest time just going to bed at the same time and just waking up at the same time, right? Just because the startup world is so volatile and the demands of growing a business, managing individuals and scaling the team and thinking about the long term, but short term, right? It's a challenge, and you're kind of fighting yourself and you're fighting different battles, and it's really a fun game. But just getting that consistency in was a huge struggle until I got the R-ing, and I think getting a coach and advisor just to help us. We have a few board advisors, but like we actually have coaches that are like, hey, what are you doing, right? Like tracking our habits and holding us accountable. And I think that was really kind of the biggest piece, because it's really interesting kind of looking at the news today, and you're hearing about these big startups that are just in large technology firms and large corporates that are just laying off people, right? And it indicates that there is going to be kind of some downdrafts in the market and the economy. And it's like, there's a lot of uncertainty going on, right? We're not talking in the election, we're not talking politics, but this is just, pretty interesting. One of the best private companies, Stripe, 14%, right? Twitter, I mean, that's obviously Elon Musk, but like, just fascinating, right? And this is not stopped. It's going to continue. And so I think it kind of is really more important for all of us, I think, and just in my opinion, just for me personally, just really think about the controllables and the non-controllables and figuring out ways to like optimize yourself to be more resilient, given that we're going to be in a market, in a period that's more uncertain. And, I talk to a lot of the founders and entrepreneurs and executives, right? They're always focused on the future, right? But I think the best way to be adaptable for the future is being more resilient. Kind of starts, the first battle start from within. So what you were saying earlier, just kind of getting a system of habits or fitness that can really get you up there, right? If it's simply just cutting out sugar, if it's simply just getting a walk in, right? Or breath work in the morning to jumpstart.
Yeah, I mean, you hear this all of the time. I mean, discipline is something that gets you started, and then the way that you're feeling is kind of what keeps you going. And really, like what you were saying, if you're waking up at 5 a.m. because that's just what you need to do to get your workout in, it takes discipline. And I think like with my own fitness journey, and I started out waking up at 5 a.m. every morning, and I was going to CrossFit, and I was doing an hour-long workout before I did anything else in the day. And that takes some discipline, but once you establish that habit, you don't want to stop, because you see how differently you feel, and you also see how differently you think.
What was the driving force behind you waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning and doing CrossFit? I mean, this is not you're taking a walk or you're going for a jog. This is CrossFit.
It was what I needed to do. I was in college, and I was running a business, and I was very overweight. I think that the motivating factor for me initially was, with being overweight, I knew I was overweight, but I would go to the gym. I wasn't really sure what to do. I would kind of like try to use the machines, and then I would feel like self-conscious about using the machines. And when you have no prior experience with fitness, it can be daunting, to start something. I had actually seen, I think it was actually an Instagram post or something.
Instagram.
This is forever ago. It was like someone doing CrossFit, and I was like, hold on a second, that looks cool. The only time that I could work it into my schedule was 5 a.m. So I would drive to CrossFit, and maybe initially this wasn't the best idea, but I would exercise fasted, and then after I left the gym, I would eat some like I would get in my car and I would like eat like boiled chicken and some fruit or something. Just the fact that I knew I wanted to be healthy. And when I started doing something where I felt like I had a sense of community and some support, which is, I mean, that's so important, and that level of accountability. It just, I didn't feel like stopping. I mean, I did that for months before I was able to kind of like establish a little bit of an easier schedule.
Yeah, but there was a big why that was kind of interesting that caused you to kind of catalyze and have that change. And the second piece was that community, right? Aspect
Mm.
of seeing your fellow compadres at CrossFit and just seeing them every day. And then it's like, hey, like you're making an investment of actually working out and waking up early, and you didn't
Mm.
want to throw it away by eating McDonald's, for example, right? You
Yes.
actually kind of crystallize that, and it's tough for us to say this. It's so easy to say, okay, it's 80% sleep and diet, and the rest is the workout, right? But it's like these are these basics and advanced basics that if we can just nail, we can kind of really just change the trajectory of people, or we can change the trajectory of kind of your health curve, right, so to speak. What's really interesting is I think you had mentioned in conversations past about losing 80 pounds, right? It's amazing. And how long did that take to do that transformation?
The initial 80 pounds was in 6 months, which is pretty quick actually. And following that, I mean, I continued to do CrossFit for 6 or 7 years. And then, following that, I kind of created my own routine that I felt like I had enough information based on my experience and, my experience with nutrition, my experience with exercise, and just how I was feeling to make it work with my own schedule, my routine, my habits, that kind of a thing.
Yeah, no, it's just like, it's funny just closing on like statistics and so forth, because again, it gets back to basics and advanced basics. And the study that Dr. Ryan kind of found, it just shows that if you really want to live longer and healthier, it's like, right, how do we eliminate heart disease and cancer? How do we reduce it, right? And so physical activity, right? And it's just this study showed that physical activity in the European Heart Journal, right, 2022,
Mm-hmm.
can really have a high correlation with regard to kind of cardiac and cancer inflammation risk, right? And this is just fascinating. 15 to 20 minutes, right, a week and of increases. And so of working out, right? And kind of getting further there, blood pressuring, right? You just simply lowering your blood pressure, dementia, right? So just these simple basics can have an outsized impact on cardiac health and on stroke, on cancer and dementia, and just kind of a longer lasting impact. What's tough is like, I just showed you a clip on Instagram of Mark Zuckerberg, and it's like, we're kind of in this like world where it's like, quick wins, instant gratification, but sometimes it's necessary to kind of think long term, right?
Yeah.
About your habits, because your habits kind of control where you eventually end up, right? I think of the world as like, you are what you repeatedly do, right? And kind of governs kind of where you go. But I think, yeah, it just is kind of really super interesting, kind of hearing your story personally, and just kind of how it correlates with being a business owner, being a founder, right?
To spin off of what you were saying, also, I think a lot of people like to try and think of how they can avoid putting in any kind of effort to get the result that they want. Something that you realize once you when you initially have the discipline to start doing whatever it is when it comes to physical activity and prioritizing your health, you just start to recognize how you don't regret having had to put in that effort, because you just feel so much different. And in order to be healthy, like you said, in the long term, you have to put in that effort. And speaking again to my own personal experience, when I was over 220 pounds, it was hard for me to climb up stairs. And I recall having done this hike that had thousands of stairs or something prior to becoming physically fit and prioritizing my health. And it was hard. Like, I would stop every flight of stairs and it wasn't even that many stairs, and I was embarrassed. I remember having felt embarrassed about my physical capabilities. And then a year later, after having found an exercise routine and prioritizing my health and creating a habit, I ran up all of them. It was
just like the scene from Rocky, right? You're just like ran up and you're
it was the same trail. It was amazing. When I think about it, it's like, if you're carrying extra weight, if your muscles aren't you're not using your muscles, you're gonna lose them. I mean,
don't use it, you lose it, right? Yeah, I totally agree. But that's a fascinating story. So that hike got you, right? That was kind of the catalyst. I think one of my stories where, working in investment world, I got super overweight, right? I was like in college, I was a Division I athlete, I did javelin and track and field sprinter, and I was really lean. And then after that, just too much in and out, I guess. And, knocking out the financial modeling and just working these crazy hours just in front of computer. We had a standing desk though, but that didn't really help too much, right? Just working those hours got me so bloated. It was just absurd. I mean, I would have joint pain just like running, like going for a run. I couldn't really go, and I couldn't believe it at effectively like in my 20s and early 30s that it was just that bad, right? I had to kind of get a few checkups from the orthopedic, and they're just like, you should lose some weight, right? And the reason why you have this knee pain, like, I
Yeah.
was like, wait, I'm I'm not that old, right? And
Mm.
so just that was kind of my moment where I was like, hey, I need to stop this, right? This is not good. And you go home for the holidays and friends and family members are like, hey, so what happened to you? I was that guy, right?
Yeah.
And so I was just kind of like, oh gosh, it's enough. Enough's enough. And I think that was kind of some of the catalysts. I didn't have a hype like you had where you're just like, oh, I hate this, right? I
Mm.
guess it was a cumulative effect. To really kind of summarize it, it's having a deep why, right, can really help you. And also having a deep vision of where you want to go, but supported by a community, right? Something we try to offer at Summa Up and our longevity practice. But overall, I think, it's really exciting to learn more about what therapeutics exists out there, but also what are the world's greatest doing, right? And so we're here to kind of help any client or any person interested in longevity medicine, and anybody who's kind of scaling up a rising business or a founder, entrepreneur, an executive, and share kind of what we learn each week. So that's all for now, and I will see you all next week.